Hello there, Psychonauts. Welcome back. Today I'm going to be talking to you about my recent high-dose LSD experience, the highest dose of LSD I've taken in my entire life. So this is my attempt at a trip report, although I'm not sure how it's going to go, but I've decided that this is going to be the video. I really do want to share this experience with you all. There's some particular phenomena and events that occurred that I might go into more detail in later videos. But here, I'm going to give you an overall rundown of what happened in this peak experience of my life. I had one of the most transformative, profound experiences. It felt like the next step in an awakening process. It felt like a rebirth. If you saw my last video, it was probably pretty obvious the impact that this experience had on me. So let's get into the trip report. So, okay. The setting of this trip is a cabin in, I don't know if it's really in the woods. It's in like a park type camping area. But it's out in nature. There's a river nearby. The day after the trip, I did some adventuring, like a canoe and a cave exploring. I put up a short about the cave exploration. Okay, but this was the first night that I arrived at the cabin. And yeah, I do have, my partner is like trip sitting me to some extent, and not tripping. So because this is a pretty high dose and you definitely need to be careful with these type of things. I would not recommend this to anybody, but I know myself. I am myself. So, well, who knows really, but I'm going to try not to get too lost in this video. Okay. So the main event that was happening for this trip is that I was turning 30. So I dosed around 9 p.m. and my birthday was the next day, and the time I was born was 1:53 a.m. So that's, around 5 hours into the trip. So I was still very much like in the peak of it, maybe past the most intense part of the peak. I don't know. It was a pretty drawn out experience, as you would expect with a high dose of LSD. That's kind of just how those higher doses go. They linger, and they're definitely very intense initially. Speaking of initial intensity, I think this trip hit me pretty fast. The first thing I did after dosing is I started dancing, and I actually posted a video of some of that dancing on my X account. I just made the X account like right after the trip. There's probably some reasons for that, but who knows. Anyway, that's there if you want to find it. But I was doing some dancing, and I could feel it really soon because I can see the time mark on the videos I have of myself, and I know I could feel it already. Like, I could feel it like 10, 15 minutes in. I mean, by 20 minutes, it's like, this is happening, man. This is happening. So I was dancing to, I think the music was Dope Lemon, but that wasn't really the music that was a part of my trip playlist yet. I had some music in mind. So I think at some point, maybe 20 minutes in, I don't know exactly, but after some dancing, I switched over to some of the music that I had planned out for the trip, and I put on the album Are You Experienced, the Jimi Hendrix album. I think I played the whole album. And at this point, things start to get like really hard to piece together very quickly. I do remember the song Manic Depression. I remember that one. I was still dancing and stuff at that point, but the trip was really starting to hit me. And I know at some point all the clothes came off and I went to my comfort zone. I went to the shower. The shower always seems to be that place that I find comfort in those moments of intensity. I don't know, it's something about like the warmth of the water, I think. I don't know. I'm gonna try to tell you the story. So I remember by the time the song Are You Experienced comes on, And I looked at the album. The album's about an hour long. Are You Experienced is track 11. So yeah, all I know is by the time that song came on, I was like in the shower, like going through it, okay? I was going through it. And I did my own like little performance of Are You Experienced in my last video, so I won't repeat that. But I remember this, and you know what? Okay. Things get crazy. After the Are You Experienced album, I know my phone and the music went rogue. I remember it went rogue, and it started playing songs that like I knew. Well, there were some songs I didn't even know. I didn't know that I was gonna get service in this cabin, and I did get service, and I had downloaded a bunch of music specifically for the trip, but my phone just started playing music. And I think after the Jimi Hendrix album is when it got into some of these like John Lennon songs that I hadn't really planned out to put in my trip. And the crazy one is, and I remember, I'm pretty sure I was still in the shower. I was at least in the bathroom when this song came on, and the song is I Found Out by John Lennon. And I've heard this song before, and another thing is I've also found out before. Like, this isn't the first time that I've found out. So we were at that point in the experience. I feel like I'm at a point in telling you about this where some things are getting lost in translation. But especially this like very like initial phase of the experience, there's a lot of confusion that can happen in these initial phases. Okay, so I did get kind of distracted there for a minute, but yeah, I found out, and it's really hard to explain what that means. It's kind of the same thing. You kind of all know it. You guys all know it. You know it, you just forgot it. I've forgotten it by this point, it seems. Or not really. There's so many multiple dimensional meanings to everything. Speaking of like music with lyrics, I actually really appreciate music with lyrics during LSD trips. Over like mushroom trips, I feel like lyrics really mess with me in a different way, but LSD trips, they can really be a critical part of the experience. Although it is kind of challenging when there was so much music. Like I said, there was so much music that just started playing that I wasn't prepared for. And at some point, like I forgot like how you do during these types of experiences. I kind of forgot that like I could influence that and like I could change the music. You get to these points where it's just like you're stuck. Like, man, I'm stuck in this song that's eternally long and I can't get out of it. And it really can mess with your head. So be careful with music selection. But it's also kind of fun in a way when it kind of has a mind of its own. This like I Found Out song was very interestingly placed, that song. So I mentioned in my last video there was another song by John Lennon, Mind Games. And the important parts, I think, were when it says like love is the answer, and you know that for sure, and something about surrender, and you gotta let it go. But there was another thing that was really interesting that I didn't mention last time, and it's the lyric, projecting our images in space and in time. At this point of the trip, the fundamental nature of reality was all starting to come together. I was losing my sense of ego, my sense of self pretty quickly, and just everything was everything. And, I start becoming connected with that universal consciousness. And I'm kind of in this weird, like, superposition of all realities. And at every moment, they all, like, play out into, like, their own infinities. But it's all this present moment. It's all happening in this present moment within this universal mind. And you're in it, and you're in it. And it all just, like, reality just merges out of the here and now in both directions. Like, it almost, like, fractals off into infinity in all these different directions and probably all these different dimensions, too. I always say this, there's a higher dimensional order to reality, and it becomes very obvious during these trips. I start picking up on patterns that I wouldn't normally pick up on, and I understand that there is the case of, like, over-recognizing patterns or seeing patterns where there's not there, and I recognize that that's also something that can occur. But I don't know. It's very convincing the way that the patterns align, and I start to feel like I'm in some type of, like, resonant reality. Like, the reality I am in, the reality that I find myself aware of in this moment is somehow important. It's somehow the reality that out of all the realities of me, this is the reality that I've paid the most attention to. And that's why this is the reality that I'm consciously in the here and now and experiencing. I don't know, I just kept seeing like reality branching off in all different directions. And I felt that feeling like you kind of understand it all again. Like there's just the waves of understanding everything, and you find out, you remember. Back to that song, I Found Out, I know that there's a lyric that goes, "No one can harm you, feel your own pain." That's something that I like to do during these experiences, is really feel my own pain. And this experience in particular, I feel like I was able to let go a lot of my pain. I was able to let go some trauma. There's one particular piece of trauma that was really a focal point of this experience, and also my last mushroom experience. And that was the fact that I had a kidney stone when I was 9 years old. And that's like one of the most painful things that human beings can experience. Like, people say that, like, I didn't just come up with that. Like, people agree that it is. And I experienced this at 9 years old, and I'm like shaking, like talking about it, right? But I don't know, I feel like the mind does really weird things when faced with such intense pain. And I don't think I realized for a really long time how much of an impact that experience had on me. And a lot of these trips were kind of bringing back those memories, like all like that time, like in the bathroom comforting myself. Just being in the act of being in the bathroom comforting myself reminds me of all those times I spent in the bathroom comforting myself through the most extreme pain of my life when I was just 9 years old. Really challenging experience. I'm probably not going to talk about it too much right here, just because of how challenging it would be to talk about. But I remember being able to at least like release some of that, and maybe some other trauma as well. There's also something, I've heard this other places. I was dancing the whole time, and a lot of like hip movement, like movement in the hips. There's something about that particular movement that really does actually release trauma from the body. I don't know. It's interesting. Okay. Another interesting thing, I did throw up once, but it wasn't that crazy. It was not that much. But I did miss. I was in the bathroom. I was probably, I think, in the shower again, and then I tried to get to the toilet and just missed. So, you know, these high dose experiences, they're not all fun and games. I'm sure you guys know that. I definitely keep getting cut off. So at some point I did manage to change the music. Although I should mention this, I mentioned it in my last video. I think this was before I changed the music, because this wasn't a song that I had planned. It was You Can't Always Get What You Want. And I don't know, I had this weird experience of like merging with this mind lattice. Like I had this vision of a mind lattice, and it was timed perfectly with this, you can't always get what you want, but sometimes you get what you need. And I explained it better in my last video if you want to check that out. But I did have this like really like divine experience with that. Anyway, the entire experience definitely felt like an awakening and a rebirth experience. But let's get into a little bit more. I managed to change the music at some point, and I put on the Magical Mystery Tour. I know I listened to the Magical Mystery Tour, and I don't know how much I remember of it. I do remember a couple things in particular. Oh yeah, Strawberry Fields Forever. That is part of the Magical Mystery Tour. I remember I Am the Walrus. That's a really good song. That's one of my favorites. It's always been one of my favorite songs. I remember being in the shower again. I don't know how I ended up in the shower again. I must have taken, like, I don't know how many showers I took, but I remember again being in the shower when I Am the Walrus, when I Am the Walrus came on. And I remember the line, I really had this, like, really interesting thought. Well, it wasn't that interesting, but it was, man, you should have seen them kicking Edgar Allan Poe. And I remember I go in my mind, I'm like, that's it. That's the ultimate response to haters. Man, you should have seen them kicking Edgar Allan Poe. And that was my new mechanism. Okay. I fear that this is starting to make less sense. So we have to bring it together. I hope that you can appreciate the energy that I have to offer in these videos, and I sometimes get very excited when I'm speaking. So let's center ourselves real quick. It's okay. It's all okay. You know, no worries. No worries. No worries. But there is this song in Magical Mystery Tour that I'd never really listened to before. I wasn't ever really that interested in it. It'd maybe come up before on playlists and I'd skip it. I don't like that song. Baby, You're a Rich Man. And now, okay, let me tell you, this is kind of my favorite song right now. I don't know, something about this song unlocked something in my brain, okay? An interesting fact about me is for the past 3 years, I told you 3 was a magic number, I have had 0 income for 3 years. I went 3 years with no income, and I can't really get into the specifics of my life situations or anything about how is that even possible, or I don't know. I'm telling you, I have made 0 income in 3 years. And it was really interesting being at this like 0 number, especially when you're contemplating things like the value of money, the value of anything. It also kind of related to this idea of zero ontology, of like everything emerging out of 0. Like 0 is like the origin. It's 0 and then everything. And it was so interesting that I was at 0. And I'm kind of I hate to say it, but I'm in desperate need of adequate resources. It's one of my biggest concerns in life is acquiring adequate resources, and I would be able to there's a lot of problems I could solve if I had adequate resources. And it was just really weird. This Baby You're a Rich Man thing, it felt like things were finally about to turn around. And it was kind of like this vision into the future, like, this is the point in your life. I've gone 3 years with $0 to my name. And at this point, this is like this inflection point in my life, and now I'm going to start making money. And it's actually true. I am officially a YouTube partner now, so there's the potential out there that I could start making money on these videos, or I don't know. But it was such an interesting, I don't even know. I never even liked this song before, and it was really interesting how much it spoke to me. And it wasn't just about like the money aspect or anything like that. I think one important lyric in it was, now that you found another key, what are you going to play? And I know that there's kind of like double meanings in that. You could just look at it from a music standpoint. Now that you found another key, what are you going to play? But for me, it was like, the whole play of my life. I'm at this point now, and it feels like the second awakening, because I had my first awakening. It was probably like 7 years ago. That number 7 and 3, it's so interesting. 3 years ago, I was 27. 7 years ago, I was 23. I don't know. It's just numbers, okay? I like numbers. I do have a degree in mathematics for a reason. Okay. Where were we? Magical Mystery Tour. Now that I found another key, what are you going to play? As much as I like non-gameplay states of consciousness, and I really do appreciate that sort of non-gameplay, if you can understand this language, those non-gameplay states, the fact of the matter is I'm going to come back down into a gameplay reality, and I kind of have to be a player to some extent. Anyway, so what am I gonna play? I don't know, but I'm gonna keep this YouTube thing up, that's for sure. Hopefully it will play out for me. I guess we'll see. We'll see if the vision comes true. Not that, anyway. It was just an interesting song. This is kind of fast forwarding a little bit into the trip, but there was another song that really just clicked in my brain for the first time, and that was Twist and Shout by the Beatles, of course. And I never really liked this song before. I like some pre-psychedelic Beatles, but there's some of it that I'm not as into. And Twist and Shout I always considered it one of the most popular Beatles songs that I just didn't like. And I don't know, something like clicked in my brain. It was the morning after. And I was listening to Twist and Shout, and it just clicked. And the thing that clicked is my brain made this connection to Ferris Bueller. And you know, the song's in the movie, and he performs it at the end, right? But in the beginning of the movie, and like that, where he comes out of the shower or something, that beginning scene, he says something about John Lennon. He quotes him. He says, "I don't believe in Beatles, I just believe in me." And that's from the song God by John Lennon. God is a concept by which we measure our pain. Yeah, I kind of just tied. It was just, I don't know. Obviously, psychedelics produce a hyper-connected state of consciousness, so there's definitely like just new connections being made, and it's kind of interesting to like see the evidence of that in like the music that I'm becoming attracted to. I don't know, but my brain just made this connection, this like weird roundabout connection with Ferris Bueller and John Lennon, and now Twist and Shout. And so I performed that song. I performed it with all of my heart. And it was kind of funny because it was the morning of my 30th birthday. I got a little kick out of, you know, my parents still have no idea. They'd probably lose their minds if they know what I was up to. And I had a little chuckle at that. And I had a really grand performance of Twist and Shout by the Beatles. It was beautiful. Okay. I was having a really good time. So Magical Mystery Tour, I don't know. I do have some, let's like at the point where I was going to turn 30, I actually recorded myself. And I cannot, I don't think I can show anybody this ever, honestly, for multiple different reasons. One of them is that I don't have any clothes on, and I'm dancing naked. I think this is pretty epic though, honestly. I hope you can appreciate it. I'm dancing naked into like the time of my birth 30 years ago. It was this very like poetic coming together moment. I don't know, like everything was like, it was this like moment of alignment and this whole like dancing into it. And I had to dance into it, and I danced into the moment and the second of my birth, and you know, it tied in with the whole experience. This was a rebirth experience. I was having a rebirth, and it was beautiful. It was beautiful. Anyway, at some point, so my birthday happened, so it's around like 2 a.m. now at this point. I think at some point I do manage to get outside, finally at 2 a.m. I don't think I got outside at all before that. Like, I just couldn't. I wanted to go outside and see the stars, but I just couldn't. I couldn't leave the cabin. It was just too much. It was all happening. I had to go with the trip. You have to trip with the trip. I mean, you don't really have a choice. But I eventually got out and I was able to see the stars. They were beautiful, of course, but there wasn't anything necessarily that I don't know. This probably is the point where we shift over into some alien experiences, and I definitely think going up and looking at the stars started to awaken that alien encounter experience, which was a theme in this LSD experience, which I want to do a video in the future talking about, like, comparing the alien contact experience or just comparing trips with alien themes in general and how those are experienced on mushrooms versus on LSD, because they have different flavors, but both psychedelics can produce these alien type experiences. So I was kind of having this like connection with alien type experiences. By the way, the aliens are interdimensional, and I did write this down. I wrote Tom DeLonge because I think he figured it out. I think he figured out the aliens. I think he did. Okay. But yeah, I think after this is when I put on another album. I put on 10,000 Days by Tool. And this was perfect. This was perfect. Especially the Patient, aka Blame Hofmann, and Rosetta Stone. The deadhead chemistry, the blotter got on top of me, got me seeing E motherfucking T. Yeah. It did got on top of me. The blotter got on top of me, that's for sure. No, I just related very heavily to that song in that state of consciousness. And that was an interesting experience for sure. Let's go back a little bit more. There is so much in this trip that I just cannot fully communicate. And it's frustrating to an extent. I think that I will be able to communicate it eventually. Yeah, so I have some more ideas to share with you. what else happened? There's so much more that happened, but I honestly think that for this trip, I'm gonna have to do a part 2. I was kind of already thinking that this trip report might go on longer than I really could let it. I just don't have the space to talk to you for a whole hour, because I think this trip report really could be like a whole hour. I still have a lot of content to get through. So I'm just gonna go ahead and end it there. We're gonna end it there. That's probably the most overview of this peak experience of my life. So yeah, I will tell you more about this experience later. I have to. I have so many ideas. I'm going to get into more deeply some of the ideas, some of the phenomena, especially. There's so much that my mind is completely enchanted with right now. I didn't even tell you about half of the trip. I have to tell you about one more thing, I think. I saw Wonderland, though. This is interesting. I usually don't describe that much of the visual aspect of trips. Because it's usually everything else that really sticks in my mind. Because I'm so much a mind person that it's all in the mind for me. The experience, it's all just like what's happening in my internal world. That's what the experience is. But I remember at one point, and back in the shower, I was in the shower again. I don't know why I'm always in the shower, but I was there. And my eyes are closed. I think they're closed, but they might have been opened. I really don't know at this point. And I've never seen something like this on LSD before. But this wonderland opened up. And it really looked like a wonderland. I can describe it. There was eyes. There was all these eyes and mushrooms and even butterflies. Like, it really looked so inviting. It looked like a wonderland. Like, I could just go walk into it. It looked like a dream world. It was beautiful. It was like so... It reminded me a lot of like the art that I put on my walls. I kind of put that sort of art on my walls to remind me of those types of visions. But yeah, I specifically remember mushrooms, eyes, and butterflies. This like acid wonderland that had emerged in front of my eyes. Who knows if they were open or closed? They were most likely closed. But it was really hard to differentiate between anything at that point. Anyway, as I told you, this video has to come to a conclusion, so feel free to ask me any questions and share any similar experiences that you may have had. And other than that, you all will see me in the next video. I'm not sure what the next one will be, if it will be a continuation of this one, or if I'll just dive into some of the other topics that have been on my mind. We will see. But that is all. I don't know why I can't end this. The end. You'll see me in the next one.